So we're just doing our pre-set up as people arrive. So your part of the process we do today has some space. So you'll need some space on the floor, ideally where you can be seen by the camera, but that's not essential. Post-it note or a piece of paper, something to write on it will be handy. You don't actually have to write if you don't want to.
I put some ropes there. If somebody needs some, just
excellent.
take it.
Yeah, so just pop over to Hans-Peter if you need to borrow them. So something to mark out space. So Hans-Peter's ropes could be some post-its, crystals, bean bags, sand you could use. It's quite difficult to get out of the carpet, maybe not. Scarves, things like that. But just be aware you might decide that you want a larger space to mark out. So if you go for something like the scarf route, you might want a couple of scarves. Also, when we get to the activity, we're going to invite you to think about a repeating situation that you don't like and you would like to change. So again, you can just have that percolating in the back of your mind. That's the thing we're going to work with. So back of the mind thing for a repeating situation you don't like and you'd like to change. I would say when we get there, not massively emotionally triggering, please, because it's a training activity. But do pick something that's important to you. And then I think the last thing we need to do, which I've been hanging on for, because Zoom makes these disappears, we have a handout for you. That's popping that in the chat. So you can probably manage with this on screen, but if you particularly want the printed version, now is the time to very quickly do that and get the printer whirring. Also to mention, this is a 2 back-to-back sessions with no breaks. So we'll be going for something like 2 hours. Good. Right, that's it. So hopefully everyone's set up enough. If anyone else joins, they'll have to muddle through as they go. So we'll get going properly. So hello everyone, thanks for coming to the session. I'm Paul. I'm a certified clean language facilitator, trainer, assessor. So I've been using Clean for 10 years, so I'm still a beginner. I've been using it in business and coaching for a long time, but I do a lot less of that now. I mainly now integrate Clean with embodiment and bodywork practices. And one-to-one, I primarily work with women who are reconnecting to their bodies, particularly after sexual trauma and difficult relationships.
I'm Wendy. I work as a trainer and a coach and a supervisor and a psychotherapist. Paul and I run Clean Change Community and deliver extensive clean training. Fingers crossed, are going to be offering an Association for Coaching certified coach training, professional clean coach. And I'm a co-author of Clean Language, Revealing Metaphors and Opening Minds, and a chapter author of Clean Language Interviewing. I think that's probably more or less enough about me.
Yeah, you might know who we are anyway, but for new people. We've got some much cooler than us people with us though, because we've got two of our assistants who are going to help out today. I help running the activity. So they're members of our communities. They've learned embodied clean, symbolic modelling, been on some of our advanced trainings. We have Nora, who's a counsellor, and she does lots of focusing. So it's an excellent person to talk to about the embodied side of things. And we have Lorraine, who, this is very cool, currently doing research, a PhD, for into therapy for intense spiritual experiences. So another fascinating person to talk to. Right, so just before we start, just a quick, so we got an idea who's in the room. Could we can ask you who's newest to clean, done a fair amount, or expert, and just get a quick show of hands. So who's newish to clean? Okay. All right. 3 or 4. That's great. Fair amount. It's Lynn. Yeah, and I know this word is hard, particularly for us British people. Any experts?
Now's the time for Lynn to put up her hand.
Yeah,
Experts. Lynn,
yeah.
Maria.
Okay. All good.
Maria
Wendy and Hans Peter, yeah.
Maria translated the book of Nick in German into German, Words That Touch.
Wow. Impressive.
Good. Wow. Right. Well, in that case, now we're intimidated. So we'll begin. Actually, do you want to do this bit, Wendy? Because I'm doing the bit after.
Yeah. So we'll begin with, how would you like to be on this call? So perhaps standing up, lying down, another layer of clothing, having a drink, stretching, or anything else that would make it easier for you to be how you'd like to be on this call.
Oh, yawning is fine as well.
Lying down would be great, thank you.
Feel free, it's allowed.
Yep. We're used to sitting in front of Zoom calls, but we really don't mind if you lay down or stand up or do something else.
I made a bit of effort though. I've got to say, I've made a bit of Christmassiness.
I'm walking right now, and I'm seeing you. Oh, sorry, not putting my camera, but I'm with you.
Okay, so Rafa's out walking and hopes she'll be back for when we do an activity that would be a lot easier to do if you were kind of in one place. You know, the theme for this Metaphorum is clean to go. And although we're using up the whole of 2 sessions of your time, which doesn't sound very clean to go-ish, there are a bunch of little bits in what we're doing that really can go under that heading. And this of saying to people, how would you like to be on this call? And then giving them a little list of varying things that they might choose, but in a way that doesn't say that they have to choose any of them. It's done in a way that says, we're thinking of this kind of thing. Take your pick from anything you like. It can be a kind of a clean to go thing. If you just say, and how would you like to be on this call, to someone who's never been on any clean coaching or whatever, they're going to be wondering, what do you mean? And so a way in which you can pretty cleanly get it so they know what you mean, but without you forcing them to do anything particular, is by giving them a little list of varying things that they could do. And you can see, you could take that as a little thing to go immediately. Okay, it's also a good thing to start with. It gets people thinking about their bodies. It lets people know that they have choices, that the facilitator thinks that them getting things to be right for them is important, and hopefully they start to consider that to be important as well. So it's got quite a lot going for it for such a tiny little activity. Right.
Good. So and just notice the Wendy said about one way to introduce things cleanly is using a list in that way, because we're going to be using lists a bit later. And certainly in the larger embodied clean, we've had to work a lot on how do you cleanly introduce things from outside to a client, which isn't clean, as clean as possible. So what are we up to today? So over the last few years, Wendy and I have been exploring how we bring clean language together with embodiment practices. A lot of what I do is embodiment and body work. We call that integrated approach embodied clean. going to do one piece of it with you today. We're going to look at what we're calling mega resources. And so these are things like if you do guided meditations or certain spiritual practices, they'll often deliberately introduce a powerful resource of some kind. That may be universal love or the grounding strength of the earth. In Clean, we don't introduce anything. But clients don't usually come up with these kind of resources on their own, which raises an interesting question. So are we limiting our clients by being so strictly clean? We think sometimes we are. So with Embodied Clean, we've been working out how you can help clients develop new abilities and access new resources that come from embodied practice. A lot of embodied practice is about doing that, but while staying broadly aligned to Clean principles. So we can't go into all of that today, but what we're going to do is aim to show you why it's important and give you some practical tools to take away. And we're going to do that by exploring what happens when we work with a powerful resource in an embodied way. And also what changes when we bring resources in physical space. How does movement affect our relationship with them? So what we are aiming for is for you to get better at spotting different kinds of resources and to discover how movement, space, embodiment can make Clean work even more impactful. So even if you're new to Clean, with the process we've got is really, really just follow the script and you'll be good. That's all fine for you. If you're one of the experts who didn't put their hands up, then hopefully you'll get some new insights into this as well. So we're going to start by exploring what we mean by resources, then we'll look at mega resources, and then we'll get to do the process.
So what is a resource? Well, one could think of a resource as an asset that can be drawn upon to function effectively. The word apparently comes from a French word that means relief or recovery. So let's start off and have a quick look at some categories of resources, and then we'll do a bit of practicing noticing them. We're hoping to broaden your idea about what all are resources, so that you can notice more of your clients' resources and your own resources going forwards. So there are 5 categories of resources that come from Babette Rothschild. So she suggests that we have practical resources like locks on the windows and a guard dog and adequate food and drink, all the Maslow hierarchy, early Maslow hierarchy things. We also have physical resources like strength and agility and balance, and like activities that manifest in the physical world: gardening, singing, playing an instrument, lock picking. And we've got psychological resources: intelligence, a sense of humor, being flexible, the psychological kind of flexible, having an ability to be self-reflexive, having coping strategies, and so on. And then there are interpersonal resources, like people and animals, like a guard dog. And there are spiritual resources, like a deity, a god or a goddess, or someone who represents something spiritual, like a guru or a rabbi, or a resourceful practice that you have, or nature and communing with nature. So it's really a pretty wide bunch of things. And having said them, what we want to do is do something practical. So we're going to do a little warm-up activity in pairs, where one person is going to talk. So Paul's put the resources in the chat. Are you going to put the instructions? Thank you. Okay, so one person is going to be the speaker, and they're going to talk about something that they like doing or something that interests them. And to talk for up to a maximum of 2 minutes. The listener is going to listen and write down all the resources that they hear the speaker mentioning, and any implicit resources, things that, in David Grove's words, would have to be there for what is there to be there. So it might be that someone fills in some information that lets you know they sit still at their desk for a long, long time, and they concentrate intensively for all that time. But they don't actually say any of those words. But plainly, it's a resource to be able to keep your concentration and focus for a long time. And so you would write that down, and you would obviously have to use your own words. So you don't have to stick exactly to your client's words. Just write down as many of the resources that come up in what they're saying as you possibly can. When the 2 minutes of them talking is up, or perhaps they stop a bit before the 2 minutes, then the listener is going to say back to the speaker all the resources that they've got written down. So then the speaker is going to listen and hear those. As soon as they've done that, they're going to do a tiny debrief, like less than a minute, and swap over and do it the other way. Does that make sense? Oh, I think I said it wrong. Swap over straight away and do your tiny debrief at the end of both turns. Okay? Any questions?
Yes, Wendy. What is the total time for both and the debrief?
It'll be 8 minutes.
Thank you.
Rachel.
So we list the resources we think they have that are implied, even if we use completely our own words.
Yeah.
Okay.
As well as the ones you hear.
Yeah, if they've said, I focus so hard on it, well then write down focus so hard. Use their words where you can, but don't let a lack of words stop you from recording a resource they clearly seem to have. Okay.
Okay, all right. I'll send you into rooms and have fun.
We've got everybody back now, so time for us to do a little debrief and hear about what you noticed, what happened. So who's got something to report?
Susie?
Oh,
Hello.
Yeah.
Susie.
Hi. Well, Maria was absolutely full of resources that I would love to be able to tap into. She was amazing, and her insights were really, really clever. Thank you very much, Maria. But hers on walking, I've always been a person that never understood the concept of a nice walk. Walking is just not nice. It's not. So I might ask to connect with you, Maria, afterwards, if you don't mind.
Okay, brilliant. So Susie found someone who was full of resources.
Yeah, which is nice when you do this, because often you can then go model them and acquire some resources for yourself, or ask to borrow them if they're physical. I just want to tip to Maria, there's Susie full of resources as well.
Yes, she is full of resources. And she said they are opposite to mine. And this is a lot of fun to know it can be so different. People can be so different. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
So was there anybody else in this group that turned out to be to have a partner who was full of resources. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there any people who discovered that their partner could spot a lot of resources in them that they hadn't realized? Yeah, I've got some nodding. Yeah. Anything else to report?
Rachel?
Yeah, my partner kind of paraphrased some of my resources. Like I said, I was very honest, and she said I was authentic. And even though it's not clean, I was just filled with pleasure that a non-clean, attribute that was pretty nice or neutral was sent my way. So I could really feel how I wanted the outside stimulation, which is weird because I'm so into clean. I just want to mention that I love the paraphrased compliments, I guess I would call them.
Excellent. Did other people love hearing what they heard, whether it was paraphrased or not? Yeah, Todd, yes.
Oh yeah, it was. I finished. We just met, Barb and I, and after 2 minutes, I after she repeated back, I was like, wow, I feel so seen and heard, and honored in that moment, because it was pretty special.
So 2 minutes and one can have someone feeling really seen and heard and honored. And if one thinks about what the knock-on consequences of that are likely to be, this is another place where there might be some opportunities to do something vaguely like we've just done with clients. I mean, one can decide how much one paraphrases or not, but feeding back someone's resources to them could leave them in a very short space of time in a way better state, and actually in a much better position to start a coaching session or something of that sort, where you're wanting for them to be able to embrace their creativity and to work out way forward with whatever they're working on. So for me, that's another possible thing to go kind of a little nugget.
So how would you introduce that possibly with a client if you were doing some coaching work, would you say?
I tell you what, I think that often if once you're working with someone, I think they would very often arrive for their next session on Zoom or real life and tell you a bit about what's been going on in the last period of time. You can listen to what they say and pick out multiple resources. So I think you can often do this without needing to sort of artificially ask them to talk about something.
Thank you.
I think it's a critical part of coaching to be paying attention and listening. Obviously, we all know that. And then to give some feedback, particularly when it's validation, when it's going to be useful. It's about something like a resource, as Wendy and Paul are saying. What I'm noticing is, and that doesn't sound very clean, but I think it's got sort of clean at its heart, and I think it's a real gift.
It's not frightfully unclean. I mean, I think one could claim actually that it's contextually pretty clean. I certainly, I must admit, wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
No, I never have either, but
Maybe I've been doing clean for 2 years, but I have been more recently allowing myself to be cleanish because it's just felt very instinctive for me. And there was a little bit in it saying, could there have been a cleaner way of doing that? So I'm still sort of working through that bit of a dilemma, really. So it's good to hear. These things are good to hear.
Yeah.
I'd say there's probably, I was going to say there's two things. When we're training people, we're encouraging them to go and try it out. And generally, most people have already got a way of working. So the first thing is just putting some clean in somewhere else. But then the next thing is also learn to be squeaky clean. Once you've got to be squeaky clean, then you actually have an ability to kind of go, I could clean something up, or I can decide to be squeaky clean now, or I can decide to not be for some other good reason. So that's where you get choice as a facilitator. But those two things, one is just taking it and using it is the first one, and then having an aspiration to be able to be squeaky clean, because that will then actually give you the choice a bit further down the line. So.
All the way from completely squeaky clean through to not even slightly clean at all. And a choice that you can make depending on what your outcome for that situation is. If the building is burning down, I would suggest a really good idea not to bother with any clean at all. Just say to the person, get out now, go quickly, would be a splendid way forward.
Yep, and external information.
What would you like to have happen?
Exactly. Introducing external information, such as the fire exit is that way, is very useful.
There was once a training we were on, and there was alarm went off, and we carried on obliviously, not realizing it was the building we were in, until a policeman put his head through the window and told us to get out.
So what I'm hearing, just to see if I get it right, what I'm learning from all this is like it's about the clean mindset. It's like the first step is you need to follow the rules just to know what to. And secondly, it's probably easier for myself if I'm in a context where I'm not in an officially strict clean language conversation interaction to introduce this, because then there is not, let's say if you're in a body work, yoga, whatever other interaction, family conversation, it's much easier to insert a couple of lines of regular clean language versus this, because I don't need to blame myself. I'm not in an official clean language, strict clean language mindset. So, well, not mindset maybe, but protocol.
Yeah.
So for me, I feel it's easier to practice it coming from that side, from than being back and forth. I don't know how that works for you.
I think everyone can decide what they'd like to have happen and make their own choice. And if you can get it so that you can be squeaky clean or cleanish or not at all clean, and you can consciously make a decision which of those you do, that's going to be the way that you get the most value out of your clean skills. That's my opinion on it.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
Okay, so
good.
sort of clean to go stuff here is the possibility of feeding back resources to someone, which will almost certainly change their state, make them, put them in a more resourceful state, better chance of getting places with any coaching. Simply saying someone a resource that a person has back to them can remind them that they are a resourceful human being. And that all by itself can change how they're viewing their situation, even if the resource you've mentioned is no use at all in the particular situation they're facing. So there's a lot of value in reminding people about resources, and people are not good at even noticing resources that they have, especially ones that they use a lot. So there's a tendency to imagine that the person must know about that resource when they don't. So again, saying something about a person's resources to them can help shine a light on something that may not be obvious to them at all. Right, I stopped.
Okay, so we're going to start thinking about mega resources now. So as we go through the next description, we're going to ask you to capture a few bits of information for yourself that you're then going to give to the facilitator in the process to get them started. So I will show you the first page of the handout that we put in the chat. Here we go. So the thing first of all to pay some attention to, and where's the tool's gone? I think this is because I'm not host. Can you make?
Oh, okay, hang on.
That's weird. No, okay. Tools seem different today on Zoom, but I'll just talk to it. So the grid at the top, where it says situation, resource, ways of accessing resource, and threshold. So as we go through the next little bit, we're going to invite you to come up with the situation, resource, ways of accessing resource. Just write them down. So you don't need to have printed this. You can just make it on your own piece of paper. But those are the 3 bits of information that we're going to invite you to notice for the process. And we just really want a word or 2 or 3 words. Otherwise, your poor facilitator is going to struggle. There's a 4th box because there's another piece of information we'll get later. So we'll go through the description, and a couple of times we'll pause so you can put something in here. So the first thing is to say, well, what are these mega resources? So as we said in the intro blurb, there are some sense of resource that's particularly big, and they often come up in guided meditations, spiritual practices. So we've got a list here, because a list is a way of introducing some information to people without saying specifically what it should be. On the bottom right, we've got some example big resources, and these, I said, fairly universal. They crop up a lot. Whether they're actually universal, I'm not sure. So the left-hand column is things that are to do with nature, things like the sun, the moon, the earth, the universe, the ground, nature itself, possibly Mother Nature. Second column, we've got some things that are perhaps a bit more spiritual, so God or goddess, the specific ones, the divine, oneness, light, life force, energy. Third column, we've put things that are more like qualities or states, so things like love and courage, peace, strength, if it's an inner strength, connection, wisdom. But think of these in some sense of like the universal version. So not just any old love, universal love, the courage from which all other courage comes from somehow, or supports all other courage. So that sense of the qualities, so get a bigness to them. And the final column is really about the impersonal, so things like community or ancestors or family. And again, thinking perhaps extended family or an extended community. So something that's got a bit of scale to it works well here. And the idea is this is ideas. This is the kind of thing it might be. And what you might choose as a mega resource might be similar, or it might be different. The thing is, clients, as they're talking, often don't, some people will mention these things, but a lot of clients don't. Yet actually, when they work with them, they find they're very powerful. So that's the idea we're exploring here. And if you give them a few examples, they kind of know the thing that you're talking about. And the other thing we're going to do in a second, because we ask you 2 questions. Modern clean is rightfully very outcome focused. We normally start with what would you like to have happen. If someone doesn't give us an outcome, internally, we're like, what are you doing? Not giving us an outcome, but on the face of it, we're all very accepting, and then we do PRO until they give us an outcome. But sometimes it's very useful to work with the problem directly, or you have a client who doesn't get to outcomes very easily. And one way to work with problems that's a relatively safe way to do it is to not focus on the problem in great detail. It's to put lots of attention on resources that might help with the problem. So the thing we do a lot in Embodied Clean, so we're going to give you a chance to have a explore with that today, and start with the situation, but it's going to effectively be a problematic situation. So Wendy's going to ask you the questions to put some information onto this little grid.
Okay, so this is going to be quick. And we're going to start at the top of your grid, the line that says situation. And so this is where you want to have in mind a recurring situation that you experience that you don't like. You're not going to tell anyone what that situation is at all. And while you could write it down there, all you actually need, or what you do actually need, is 1 or 2 words that could represent that situation. And those 1 or 2 words you are going to tell to your facilitator. So have a think as to what would be 1 or 2 words. We do mean like 1 or 2, not 6. Just to make it easier on your facilitator. So pick a word or 2 and get that written down on the situation row. Just a quick reminder, don't use a 10 out of 10 on a triggering scale kind of a situation. Use something that is relevant and important to you, but that is appropriate for a training environment where you can put it down and swap role to be a facilitator really quickly as we go through the session.
I didn't get it.
Hans-Peter, what I'm saying is we want everyone to come up with a recurring situation that you don't like and that you'd like to change, but don't make it a terrible situation.
I got it. Yeah, I got this one.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to move to the next row in the grid. And in that row, you see it says resource. The question is, when there's that situation that you don't like and that you'd like to change, what is a mega resource that could help? And you can use the list on your handout page, and it's on the screen at the moment. For inspiration, you could pick one of the things in the example big and fairly universal resources, or you could change one a little bit, or you could pick something completely different. It's your choice. Write it down on your grid on the resource level.
Sorry, Wendy, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Is this also multiple, or did you ask for 1? I can't remember.
Let's do 1.
1, just 1. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And
We want the facilitators to feel good doing this process.
yeah, for 1 or 2 words again.
Oh yes. Keep have a label for your resource that is just 1 or 2 words long, and only 1 resource. But it's a really good point. That's something you could easily facilitate yourself through, or perhaps someone practice sometime after the session, and get yourself more than 1 resource.
But a mega resource, if I would have this resource, it would work, wouldn't it? But it doesn't work.
What do you mean, Hans-Peter?
I should find a situation, a recurring situation I don't like.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a mega resource for it. If I knew the mega resource for it, I could use it. Or if I could come up with one. So now I found a mega resource, but this one doesn't exist.
That's okay.
You know, I think you could see a lot of these mega resources already being kind of in the form of a metaphor. And so I guess that whatever mega resource you've come up with that doesn't exist could be regarded as a metaphor.
Maybe, yes. Maybe. Okay, got it.
Okay. So everyone, when you come up with your mega resource, spend a moment just getting to know it a bit more. So notice that the attributes of a mega resource are often resourceful in their own right. The qualities of that mega resource are very often very resourceful. So, for example, the sun, it radiates light and warmth. It's life-giving and it's constant. Those are some pretty awesome qualities. Ancestors might have resilience and life experience and wisdom and courage. So in whatever way is right for you, self-facilitate, draw, whatever, to help yourself to become more aware of your mega resource and its qualities in the next few seconds. Okay, number 4.
Okay. So there's another resource. This is perhaps a little bit less obvious, and it's the way that you access your mega resource is the resource itself. For example, it's all well and good if you've got Thor, the Norse thunder god, as your resource. But as everyone knows, thunder gods are pretty annoying in the kitchen because they break all the crockery. So obviously, you keep him locked in the wardrobe until you need him. But if you don't have the key to open the door and you really want to go smiting with some thunder and lightning, it's like, no good. So that key, knowing where it is and how to use it, they're resources as well. So they're the resources that let you unlock the power of your thunder god. So we've got on the bottom left of this grid, we've got some examples of ways you might access a resource. For example, you might simply feel it. So feel it and maybe feel it somewhere. Just feel it in my heart. I feel it in my gut. It might be you embrace it. So it could be, for example, you absorb the energy, or you breathe in the peace, or you connect to your ancestors, dive into your courage, become one with the light, open your arms to the universe, or awaken the strength within you. There's a verb in there. You might wrap yourself in courage. So that left-hand box has got some examples. Just be aware, sometimes it's the actor in the verb is the resource. It may be that the resource envelops you. As I stand there, the clouds of love wrap themselves around me. So sometimes it's the other way around.
Okay, so we're going to have a minute to for everyone to fill in the line in the grid that talks about a way of accessing your resource. And so the question is, how would you like to access your mega resource? And you can use that list bottom left on the screen, or and pick something from it, or take something from it but change it a bit, or you can pick something completely different, but get a way of accessing the resource written down again, keep it short, just a couple of words at most. And again, when you've decided on how you'd like to access it, do whatever is right for you to do to get to know more about how that accessing is for you.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the activity now. So we're going to do an activity that's a chance to explore your relationship with your resource. And we're going to use movement and space and some reporting back at the end. We're doing this activity to primarily to develop your facilitator skills. This is more of an activity that it's a bit more of a training script that's designed to offer you practical skills, not necessarily be a direct client process, although you absolutely could use it with clients. It's more that once you pick up the skills, you can improvise a process like this or put some of the skills into what you do already. So that's how this is designed. And in your role as a client, the idea is what we're hoping is you'll experience how impactful it can be to work with a big resource, and also be encouraging embodiment, space, and movement in this as well. So it isn't about resolving your issue as a client, but we are hoping you'll find it valuable for the situation you've picked. In part of the process, we're going to set up a space. So it's got a specific structure. So again, this is a not clean thing. The client isn't getting, they get a lot of choice over the space, but we're going to set up a space that represents accessing and not accessing the resource. So the resources will be in space. We're going to invite the client to place a threshold around it. They'll get to pick their own word for it. And so outside the threshold represents not accessing, and on the other side of the threshold represents accessing. So that's our structure, pretty general structure, but we are imposing that. So that's just to notice that's the thing that's coming in from the outside here. But notice how much choice you've had about everything else. We're going to ask you to follow the script. It's got various micro skills encoded in it that are to do with space and embodiment. So the idea is to not improvise yet. Follow the script exactly as it says. Once you've done that a few times, then you've got the hang of it. That's the time then to start improvising. Okay, so we'll show you page 2. Yeah, what I've realized is I don't have Zoom annotations, which is very handy for talking through this. 1 second.
What are you saying?
The Zoom annotations.
Oh, that's irritating.
That is very irritating, yeah.
I did make you a host, by the way.
I know, I was hoping that might work. Hang on. I'm going to see if the PDF things will work. All right, let me try doing some. Right, I might use the highlighter. Okay, so process is, I've got 7 boxes. So we start with, begin with box 1 over here, which is setting up space. The 7 boxes, they flow left to right. Thank you, Adobe. They flow left to right. It's a step-by-step guide. So what you'll also notice is there's some words in blue. So right here, I've got resource. So whenever you see the words that are in a sort of bluey green color, they're the placeholders. They're the ones that you're going to replace with a specific word that the client's given you for that little grid that we just made. So if their mega resource is the sun, then he'd say, write sun, or write the sun on a post-it note or paper. Or over here, say, stand far away from the sun. So bluey-green words replaced with your client words. So we begin at box 1, and this is about helping the client set up the space. So they're going to, first thing, they'll give you some information from the grid. So just get their words, put them into the grid. So you've got resource, way of accessing, and the situation. And then just read these pretty much as they are. So you've helped them write a resource on a post-it or piece of paper, place it where it needs to be on the floor, just read these out. And then if the client follows the instructions, that will set up the space. And they'll have a resource in the room, some kind of threshold around it, and they'll get to choose what they're going to call that. So in this question, when you say what they'd like to call this word, that's that extra row. They'll give you some extra words for whatever this threshold is. Maybe it's boundary or edge or border, and that's the other word you're going to collect up. So once the space is set up, follow the instructions. Box 2 is exploring the relationship in space. So you guide them to stand in different positions, and they'll notice what happens in their body. So just follow the instructions in order. They're written exactly as you say them. As we move over to box 3, we go, need a bit of room. So boxes 3 to 7, you're going to notice some boxes are a bit more structured, but boxes 3 and 6 give the client some freedom for exploration. But you just say exactly what's in there. Say thing number 1, let the client do their thing, then ask question 2. So the only thing in terms of facilitating this to notice, there's some italics over in box 4. So at this point, box 4 is about accessing the resource. So you would ask, would you be interested in, whatever the way of accessing the resource is, would you be interested in embracing the love? Or would you be interested in breathing in that peace, whatever their words are? If you don't get a congruent yes, then we move on to box 5. So this is about consent, because it's that person's choice about whether they want to access that resource in that moment. It's important to honour that. That's one place that it's important to pay attention to. And the following question, this one here, this one's very important as well. It's a kind of instruction and question. Not so used to doing this. So there we go. In that, this is quite a significant one. In it, you'll be telling the client to physically cross the threshold using their words. And then
cross the threshold from outside their resource to within
inside.
The resource. Yeah.
So you're saying cross, so they move in space. And then immediately you're going to be saying back to them their metaphor for accessing the resource. So effectively we're stacking movement in space onto their metaphor for accessing. And the space is already set up to metaphorically be about accessing. So an example here would be, let's say their word for this threshold they've created is edge. And let's say their metaphor for accessing is embracing the clouds of love. Then you might say, and cross the edge. And as you embrace those clouds of love, what's happening in your body now? Okay, so you can pretty much just say it, just put the words in, but just notice that's a very interesting question. So what I would say in all this, don't worry about getting it perfect. So the process is quite robust. Just follow the steps, have a go, and it will certainly be interesting. That's what we hope. And yeah, so just keep track of where you are, substitute the blue words. It should all be good. So any quick questions about how to facilitate this?
Got a couple of observations, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
One is there's a piece in here about arranging the string cable, etc., i.e. something that's been predetermined to be used to mark an edge. We might not have that available at this short notice. Does that matter? So just in case it isn't there, we just make that up. We can,
just grab something.
Anything good.
Yeah.
Post-its, quite good for
pens, objects, anything.
Yeah.
You can make it. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And just the fact that this may have to be done in a smallish piece of space because not everybody's got lots of space, and that's okay too, presumably.
Yep. I think the main I think that the main thing is this: you can make an area that you can actually cross into.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
We've done some experimenting at a practice group or two as to how small a space one can successfully use clean space, the process, in. And the answer is very small. So I think people just scale things to fit the space available. If anyone finds that's not true, you can tell us that at the end. So one other thing, which is in box 3 and in box 6, you have this opportunity to explore freely, where you're not being told what to do, you can choose. And, the sky's the limit. You could do whatever you like. You could sit down on your resource, you could twirl around while you stand in your circle, you could jump out your circle, well, if it is a circle. And so, you can do anything that occurs to you would be interesting to try out at that point. Okay, I'll stop talking.
So we're going to do this in pairs. And how long do we have?
You have got, just check. You've got 14 minutes between you. So 20 minutes each way. We hope that 20 minutes will prove to be an okay time for this activity. But of course, some people take longer and all that. So if after about 10 minutes you aren't yet at box number 3, then leave out box number 3 and go to box 4. If you get to about 16, 17 minutes in and you're not yet at box 6, leave it out. And in the last 2 minutes or so, go to box number 7. And so aim to finish at box number 7 if you can. And if you need to make up some time, then box 3 or box 6 would be the ones to leave aside. Ideally, you want to finish with a couple of minutes spare. So ideally, finish in about 17, 18 minutes and do a little debrief and then swap over. But if you don't have time for a debrief, if it's already 20 minutes in, then swap straight over. Just try to give both people an equal opportunity as a client and as a facilitator. I need to resume.
So, welcome back. That for some people that may have been a bit too short a time or a bit abrupt. It's the nature of these things. So,
you cut off our observer. He was just going to make some incredibly incisive comment, and that was it. We were brought back.
That's Paul for you. He doesn't need.
I said it on automatic.
It's brutal.
Anyway, right. So we are pushing it with time, but it'd be very lovely to hear a few things from everyone before we wrap up, or well, not from everyone, but from anyone who'd like to share. So,
I need to say thank you to Scott. I didn't get a chance to say thank you to you.
Thank you too, Fiona. Thank you so much.
Anything you noticed or learnt from that process, either as client or facilitator?
Given that we had some logistical issues, I think we worked really, it worked really well. And it would be even better being a bit more familiar with the script and having it somewhere other than the screen, because neither Scott nor I could see each other, but we could hear each other.
So next time with printout.
Yeah, once you've had a go and you know how it works, absolutely. So absolutely do practice it again. Have a bit more time as well. We did time it before, and most people, 20 minutes is just about enough. But for some people, it's not at all. So, and if you slow the process down, which is also good when you're in your body, this could be a much, much, much longer process. So.
Yeah, very powerful, very powerful.
If I may, I think it took a while just to connect to each other, and then the process went smooth, more smoother and smoother, and I was behaving better and better as facilitator, and my client was behaving more and more natural. So
Excellent. I think there's a quick thing to say, which is mega resources are mega impactful often, and it's a good idea with clients who are inexperienced not to start by doing this process. So this process helps people who don't know much about mega resources and working with the body and in space. It helps them to, have an experience of all of that quite quickly. But I think it can be quite discombobulating for someone who's not done much in the way of coaching or anything related. So I would always suggest that you start with doing some not so mega resource work first, so that people can get more of a sense of all of this.
Can I ask a follow-up question, Wendy? Do you have any recommendations on what would be a good starting point for that kind of interaction?
Well, you could do a process along these lines, or with more body questions, or more space questions, or more metaphor, but use a resource that isn't that enormous. So I don't know, go for someone who can, I don't know, concentrate for long enough to get their bills paid online for the week or something, and find out about that concentrate, or so something that's a more everyday kind of a resource.
Yeah, and we originally did this when we were teaching. This was part of Embodied Clean, and originally we teach you with just a resource that you would have perhaps got from that first exercise, that kind of type of resource. I mean, obviously people can come up with big spiritual resources in that one, but something slightly lower scale. But we thought this was a good way to show you quite a few things in one go. Also, this what's going on here, the thing we thought about a lot for Embodied Clean is the developmental level of clients. So this is their ability to work with really anything, their ability to work with metaphor. You'll find some clients just don't really get it and find it very hard. Their ability to work in space, their ability to work with their body. This might be another one. So Embodied Clean, we do quite a lot of, well, let's assume someone walked into the room and didn't even really realize they had a body. They couldn't feel anything in it. How would you go from that to very embodied processes? And we've also been starting to think through, well, how does that work for metaphor as well and for space? Because it's exactly the same kind of things play out. So the more complex answer to your question, which is that calibrating your client on the multi-dimensions of their capability to engage in these processes. And then you sort of find the pieces that match their level. So as well as working on their outcome on a problem, you're also working on a developmental level to kind of give them more skill to address any problem like this in future. So we major on that a lot in Embodied Clean, but the same idea. We said last year we did 5S model. That's what our 5S model is all about.
Now, it's this thing that it's not just children who go through sort of developmental cycle. The same, you've got to learn to crawl before you walk. That kind of idea applies to clients of a clean facilitator. Some people already know loads about Metaphorum, and you can just jump in and it's all grand. Other people will need more hand holding and supporting to be able to do that. And so, these kinds of processes can be a great way for helping people to start to uncover things that they might have not realized were possible before.
Yeah. And Susie says in NLP, this reminds her of circle of excellence, collapsing anchors. Again, one of the things we're aiming, I think, to do in Clean is get to what's the fundamentals, what's the sort of universal things that are underlying. So when we if you start working with space and metaphor and the body, and particularly do it cleanly, you start to work out how all these other processes in coaching and NLP and everything else work, because you've kind of somehow got really to the roots of what's going on, because you've kind of kept everything out so much that what's left must be kind of how things are. And then you start spotting all the clutter other people have put in their processes. But that's another story. But it means then you can start building your own things out of these kind of principles.
And if you can stick to pretty universal stuff, then that helps to make it more likely that it's going to be applicable to a client.
Good.
Right. I think we are obliged to say a big thank you to everyone for coming along and diving into the stuff. If you wanted to stay and talk, then we would be entirely available. And I also want to say thank you to Nora and Lorraine for being assistants and adding some extra skills to the whole process. But if you're wanting to hurry off to the plenary, then probably there's just time to do that now before it starts.
Yeah. And
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It just stopped the recording.